Yeah, I was actually reading Neil's thing about the Great Earthquake of Livermore.
That's right. Yeah.
He's just like, what was it, 1980?
Yeah, 1980.
And you were in seventh grade?
Yes.
Dude, I was 10.
Did you change your diaper before we started?
Actually, the funny thing is
did you, Neil?
That's right, man. The funny
We're
thing
wearing it for different reasons.
Exactly. It's like, I don't change it. What's architecture really about? Archispeak is the show that dares to peek under the architectural kimono, exposing what architecture really is, what it is that architects really do, and show you why we're passionate about our chosen profession. I'm Cormac Phelan. Join Evan Troxel, Neil Pan, and me as we have a casual conversation about all things architecture, which includes all the stuff people don't talk about. Think you already know what architecture is really about? Tune in and find out. It's time for some Archispeak.
Let's turn this tragedy into a learning experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting. You say that, but it's kind of interesting because, like, say, the more recent, school shootings and things like that, how has your kids' schools dealt with things like that? I mean, kids are going to hear about it, so they're going to, want to know, one way or the other. I mean, like, one of the first questions my 10-year-old asked me is, am I going to be safe at school? And I was like, well, yeah, you'll be safe at school. I mean, it's not like, schools really prepare for this, but, they, we do think about these things, especially in design. In fact, actually, that might be something interesting. How do you prepare for the worst through architecture?
Well, yeah, just one thing that I'm working on that new high school, and there were those shootings a few months ago, and we were going through the user group meetings, and one of the teachers was in there and said, I don't really want to bring this up, but what about the big elephant that's in the room, and it was, what are we going to do in this school to protect our kids against what just happened? And so it was like an active discussion about how do we handle that architecturally as much as we can, so that, basically where there's glass in the front walls and people can see what's happening inside the classroom. Well, now not anymore from 4 feet down. There's got to be something that kids can hide under. And so that was one way that we handled that architecturally in the planning of this new school. And so every curtain wall, every storefront in this project is solid from 4 feet down.
Basically, so you've got a 4 foot high sill before, of solid masonry? Or just...
No, we just have solid paneling. It's more just for vision, just to obscure what's going on so that kids can duck and cover and not be found out as easily.
Some of our school districts, all the school districts that I know of that we work with in the state of Maryland, what they do is they actually have now all exterior windows and exterior doors. Basically, any exterior glazing. It's equipped with, just blinds, so that the teachers can close all of the blinds, so that they would get a warning that basically says that there is either some form of danger on site or near. Every single blind would be closed. All exterior doors would be closed. Most of the schools that we do, we've got, obviously, because of code and everything, you've got several exits out of the building. But all of those exits are either only have exit out and don't have an actual knob to get back in. So there's no way of, somebody from the exterior getting in. Or what they have is, a keypad or a card reader that, the teacher, only the teachers and staff have to get back into those particular doors. And, more and more, especially in like the older schools where we're doing a lot of retrofitting and doing a lot of renovations. New schools, we typically have kind of like a single point entry with a double vestibule that, when you come into the first set of doors, the second set of doors are locked after, the bell rings, they're locked. And typically before the bell rings, you've got staff hanging out at the front, watching all of the kids come in and watching the people come in. And, nobody really goes in that isn't supposed to be in there. And then when the bell rings, all those staff typically go to their classrooms or wherever else they need to do. So the second set of doors are locked, and you only have one door that goes into the office. So you actually have to get buzzed into the first set of doors, buzzed into the office, check in, sign into the office, and then you kind of go in, you kind of go out of the office and bypass the second set of doors, and then you're kind of into the entry lobby and on into the school. And so that's more and more what we're doing. In fact, actually, the school that I'm working on that just broke ground, that's what we were doing, is they just had a single point entry, but there was no vestibule, no security vestibule of any kind. You just kind of went right into the school. And because because when you walk into the lobby, there was no visual connection from the office to the lobby, you didn't really know who was in there. So we've actually because we're doing, major renovations to it, we're kind of ripping out the whole front admin portion of the building on, all of the new program and stuff that we're building in, and reworking the whole thing. So the lobby goes right, it's all glass. You can see right, and actually it's kind of funny because we do have large masonry, higher masonry sills. I think that was more of a kind of a response to the existing design and less about security. But now that you mention it, they now have a place to hide, if need be, behind, solid masonry walls. But we've revamped everything to bring all of the, security into a visible space. You can't walk in, you can't just walk right into the school. And had a conversation with a parent who, before they realized that, I was a, architectural professional, realized that, he was just kind of talking about, all of the different things that have been going on in the news, and, talking about all the different things that they need to do to, and even the Oklahoma tornadoes that, they were talking about, how can you protect, the student population from tornadoes and stuff. And I started going through the things that, have been enacted in Florida under the new codes and things like that. And, explaining to him that a lot of times it takes these large events to happen to shake people into gear to say, this is how we should have been designing from the day one.
Well, that's how codes are developed and modified throughout the years, Yeah. Again, the high school that I'm working on right now is a completely open campus. It's much like a community college. And so that's a different approach altogether, right? I mean, it is a high school, so the kids are older. And then even as you do get into community college and university level scenarios, they're all open campuses. And, much like this recent event in Santa Monica, I'm sure that was an open campus. People can kind of just go wherever they want. And makes it much harder. And when you're dealing with older structures and older projects like the one you're dealing with, I was working on a similar one in Beverly Hills, and it's a middle school, or actually I think it's a K-8. And it was similar thing, that the admin had been moved from its original position, and they kind of stuffed it into this other spot because they needed more space at one time, and you'd walk all the way into the middle of that campus before you even saw a sign that pointed you in the right direction to go find the admin. It was not apparent. They had no line of sight to see who was coming at all. And that was one of the biggest challenges when it came to start talking to them about modernizing their school, was how are we going to get you guys to have a secure point of entry where you know exactly who's coming in and who's going out, and they do have a fence out at the perimeter, but nobody, after school starts, there's no one that can just stand around out there and monitor that. And so they would buzz people in, and they would, hope that person would come right to the administration, know where it is. But, that person had plenty of opportunities in that 500 or 600 feet to go wherever the heck they wanted to. And so when you're dealing with these older projects where the site changes, the fencing can change, where things are located on campus can change, it could become a big design problem to start to figure all that stuff out. And it's interesting, and at the same time, it's frustrating because, they don't always have the money to do the right thing. You have to figure out the best scenario that's possible in that location at that time. And that's a tough problem to crack.
My kid's school, elementary school, was remodeled, I think, around 2007, 2005 through 7, somewhere around there. And safety was clearly not on the mind of anybody working on this project, because the kindergarten classrooms actually faced the parking lot. And so the doors into the 3 different kindergarten classrooms all just face the parking lot. They're completely open. They're not behind a fence, a gate, nothing. And after the events last December with the shooting, they started closing. They typically would close those doors anyway, but they weren't always locked, and so now they're locked. And you can't really get in unless you go through the office. But you were just talking about how you get in and lines of sight for these schools, and again, using their school, my kid's school as an example, they do have gates, and I find it curious though that they now, after December, they started locking those gates during. They were always locked in that from the outside you couldn't go in, but from the inside you could turn a lever and go out, and then they would lock in behind you. Yeah. And I thought, oh, okay, that's fine. But after the events late last year, they started actually bolting those locked. And I didn't think that was a great idea, because if there was something,
code, that's a bad idea.
Yeah, I didn't look that up, and you guys helped me here. I thought that was really kind of dangerous and maybe even illegal.
Yeah, both.
Well, it depends on how much open area they have. If there's safety dispersal zones that people can load into, like I've done a school in an urban area that's surrounded by busy streets, and you can't go off campus, but there are zones, and every teacher knows exactly where they are, where your class is supposed to go, which is outside, and it's in this. Right. And, that's in case of a fire. But to get to that point, you can't have any barriers, So you have panic hardware.
Their school definitely has lots of open space, a play yard, an adjacent field that's part of a park. In fact, the play yard is huge, and it is within the fence. The outside area beyond the fence, where the field is, which is part of a park, is outside that fence. Although the one time I was volunteering in class, we had a fire drill, and we actually went outside of the fence. I'm not sure who actually opened it or how that worked, but part of the fire drill was everybody went outside the fence onto the park, essentially right next to the only thing separating it, the blacktop and the grass, is the fence. So it was opened. We all filed out. We got in single file lines. Everybody counted, and then the bell went off and everybody went back in after the fire drill was practiced. But what I find interesting is that they lock all this stuff down. So technically, really, there's only one point of entry other than the kindergarten classes. But you go into the office. Well, the office is just like a side door on, the main building in the front. And you basically open that door and you walk about 10 feet, and to your right is the receptionist. There is no line of sight. You just walk right up, and there they are.
Yeah.
Any security cameras of any kind, any kind of most of the schools that we do that have that kind of problem where there is no line of sight, usually we'll have at the front door there'll be a buzzer, and the am I like blanking on the actual term, but basically it's a camera where you ring the doorbell, and you've got a intercom back to the office. The office phones have actually got screens on them that you can actually see that particular, you can see the person standing at the door. The AI phone is what we call them. But do they have anything like that?
That's a good question. Certainly I think from a phone perspective, there's nothing there with video cameras looking. There may be a camera outside or a camera in the hallway. I'll have to take a look next week when I go in. But they certainly have no ability, at least that I'm aware of, just looking when I walk in, to view any sort of video from the reception area. And basically, you could just walk right past the reception area and go right onto campus, And I've been in there many times when, I am checking in. I'm printing out my little volunteer badge, and making sure everybody knows I'm there. But literally, if the receptionist isn't sitting there, you could just walk right by her, and you're right onto campus, and no questions asked.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things are handled with technology now. Yeah, with security cameras and stuff like that. But the interesting thing to me about this whole subject is because, architects aren't always working on these sites. There could be decades where an architect doesn't touch a school, and it gets modified over time. And we'll come into a school later when they have to do a big addition or a modernization, or, when the district passes a bond and they divvy up the money amongst all the schools, and then they decide what they want to do with them. And you come in there, and there have been so many problems that have been, and I'm, air quotes, solved throughout the years, that we have to go in and completely undo and refigure, and it's a big giant mess. But these schools they really are doing the best they can, but at the it's their maintenance crew, it's what they know, their level of sophistication when they're solving these problems. And so there will be doors that have just been plastered over, their doors still in the wall, and they're just doing this stuff. There's no professional contractor, there's no architect, there's no drawings, there's no permits. It's like it's a weekend job, and
yeah, exactly.
The maintenance guy and his buddy, they get together and they can do this thing and take care of it. And then Monday comes and the principal's like, perfect, that's just what I wanted. And then we come in there years later and it's like, oh my gosh, that this is never going to work, and we got to undo all this stuff. And what, like you're saying, Cormac, when you're working on these old schools in Annapolis, that every day you guys dig up some relic that was buried there, it's like, it's an amazing thing to have to experience and go through and solve all these additional problems that show up because everybody's taking these things into their own hands. And this goes hand in hand with housing, and you have owners out there who take a class at Home Depot, and then all of a sudden they're an expert in framing, whatever. And oh my gosh, there is a certain mentality when it comes to buildings that is very much do it yourself.
And actually, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that virtually everything from 1895, when Annapolis Elementary School was built, to this day, there's been like every construction, faux pas, every hazardous material, every possible thing that you could imagine Yeah, sure that, solid masonry wall can bear on this soil with no footings or foundations. Not a problem. Simple little things like that. That we're coming back in and it's just like,
right.
Oh, I really don't think that this $21 million budget for this revitalization is going to cut it because, and thankfully, actually, it was changed. It was bumped up a little bit more, but and we're eating every bit of that up by unforeseen conditions and but. Yeah, you're right. I mean, you've got all of these different modifications and, and back to, what we were talking about, like, you were saying, the advent of security cameras and things like that. I mean, basically they made modifications, whether they were, with security in mind or without security in mind, based off of whatever the current technology or deal that the school board could get from some vendor. And they're like,
right.
This is the best thing that you can do for your school.
Let's turn this tragedy into a learning experience.
We can, if we're sole sourced and we're the only ones that are, allowed to come in here and do all of this stuff, we can get it to you at a cut rate. And they're like, ooh, cut rate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cheaper
I'll
is
go
better.
with that.
Right?
And then you just.
Yeah. I love it when these people, I know a guy.
Exactly.
That's all that's said. And oh my gosh, when somebody says that, it's like,
yeah,
get me out of here.
Yeah, and but nowadays, and I was curious, Evan, when you brought it up. I mean, when you go through the design process, where we have basically every time we have design reviews from each of our jurisdictions. Basically their general maintenance, their landscape crews, all these other people, their the shops for HVAC and plumbing and everything else. Everybody's got a say in the matter, and they come in and they basically say, okay, no, you can't use these lights because these are the lights that we have, and we've ordered a warehouse full of these, and this is how you're,
Yes.
This is what we want you to design. Exactly. So you've got all of that, and so you go through and you basically design it based off of either really old ideas of the way they used to do it, or by warehouse stock.
Yeah, that comes up all the time. I'm working on this high school, and one of the things in their kind of district standards, the M&O district standards, it actually said no fancy type lights.
Fancy type. Oh, that's awesome. So,
yeah, no fancy type lights, and it's like, what the hell does that mean? I could imagine what that means, but at the same time, I can't.
Hold on,
and who actually wrote that?
Well, I don't know if it's better, but it's on par with that. So I have a jurisdiction that we work with that they turn the air conditioning off every summer. So we're in the Mid-Atlantic region. It gets hot. It gets humid. Ceiling tiles like to absorb, humidity. And once you turn them back on and they start to dry out, they start to sag. One of the good things that you can do to combat that, since they're going to continue to turn the air conditioning off, is at least go to a 2x2, maybe a bevel. So it minimizes
the span. Yeah.
So I worked up a design, had all this 2x2 tile in it and everything else. Two different issues were why they nixed the 2x2. One was even though you can put a 2x4 light in a 2x2 ceiling grid, they don't like it because you can't just pop in a tile, pop out, pop in a light and all that other stuff. You have to reconfigure the ceiling grid. Okay, I might be able to buy that one. But my favorite reason why I could not do 2x2s is every single one of their maintenance crew were robust fellows that can't fit up into a 2x2 space. They need the 2x4. So basically, we have to design to the size of the round fellows getting up inside the ceiling plenums. Yeah. Yeah,
I call that bubba-sized. And I had to do, when I was doing bathrooms in a new building, we had to have 4 feet between our plumbing walls.
Wow. Really?
For that reason.
Did you put a door?
So 4 feet by,
did you guys put
20
a door
feet
in the
long.
chase?
You got to have a door at the end, a full-size door. Yeah, for Bubba.
See, we don't see normally we'll just,
It's crazy,
we don't,
right?
thankfully I have seen that where we do like oversized, plumbing chases and stuff. But thankfully, most of our, retrofits and stuff, we're so short on space anyway that thankfully they just let us get away with what the manufacturer will, allow for like the size of the carrier, for the toilets or the labs or whatever. Yeah. So thankfully, like say if it's if it's not a back-to-back, it's like, what is it, 14 inches. And then if it's back-to-back, it's 24, which our mechanicals tend to have differing rule of thumbs on what they require in size of chase. It always seems to get bigger between MEP consultants. It's just like, well, I only have a rain leader coming down here, but I need.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, it only gets bigger.
A 48-inch clear chase, but it's a 4-inch pipe. Well, yeah, but with insulation, you're only specking out 2 inches of insulation. So I mean, I know I went into architecture to avoid math, but that only sounds like 8 inches to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. This also goes to more efficient designs of fixtures and things like that, where the district. I mean, I guess that's as designing a project, that's kind of almost your only argument, because a lot of times these schools fall back, and I hear this all the time is, well, just do it. What do we have at the other high school? Yeah, we'll do it just like that. You guys built that high school 12 years ago. I mean, things have gotten better. And so, you probably do have a warehouse full of T8 bulbs, right? But now we're doing LEDs everywhere because we have to hit LEED, we have to hit, California high performance design. We have to hit all these things where the only way we're going to be able to achieve these points are by using these efficient water fixtures and toilets and light fixtures, and it really becomes, it has to be a conversation like that, or else the fallback is, nope, this is the district standard. And so even on this new school, we wanted to do a central plant. It's a huge school. It's over 40 acres, and there's 12 buildings. And normally you don't do a central plant on a high school, but when it is that big and there's that many buildings and that many zones for control for temperature, it makes a lot of sense. Nope, district standards package units. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And so now we have to dedicate 40 square feet of every classroom to a duct chase on the second story. And it's like all that wasted space that could have been learning environment, because we have to do package units. And it's pretty infuriating when you go through this process.
We're talking about schools a lot here, and that sort of subject also comes up in the home building industry about reusing of plans. It seems every developer always thinks, we did that plan. This plan like 10 years ago, it worked. It sold really well. And there's no question, hey, a plan is successful. It may have sold very well 10, 12 years ago, or maybe even 2 or 3 years ago. But that idea that, we're just going to reuse plans, so we don't have to pay the architect to do anything. Just stamp these new sets of plans. Oh, but, we have a new purchasing guy and we have a new director of construction, and, they each have their own little things that they like. And so suddenly this reuse plan starts getting changed. And then it goes through essentially an entire design over again. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, we're not even reusing, quote unquote, reusing the plan anymore. But, but architect, your fee. Right. Yeah,
but
exactly.
Your fee was based on that.
Still just the reuse fee. And it's kind of crazy. So we see that even in the home building industry a lot, just the idea that you can reuse a plan and have it be cheaper, but in reality, you always change it, and the architect ends up getting it in the shorts.
Oh yeah, I mean, even we ran into that problem when I was using the kind of like the reuse plans and stuff like that in some of the developments that we were working on. But since they were these planned communities, these new urbanist communities, they were like, well, we like the plan, but we're going to flip it. We're going to put it on the site this way. We're going to have a wraparound porch on this one. This one's just going to have, just the single front porch. This one's going to do this, one's going to do that. But it's going to be the same plan. So there's really nothing that you need to do, right?
That's exactly right. Yes.
Absolutely. There's nothing we need to do,
But hey, do they sell it as a repurposed site-adapted home, or do they sell it as a custom home?
They sell it as a custom home.
They sell it as a custom home.
I will say that when we were doing this, we basically had a base fee that we would do each of the houses, said, okay, you're going to purchase, if you use this plan X amount of times, you're going to, basically the first one is going to, cost you, X amount of dollars. And it's going to be the most expensive because we've gone through design committees to tweak it and change it. We've done hourly design, charrettes. We've gone through and done all of these different things, so that's the one that costs. And then, we develop, cost for each additional reuse, and every contract for the reuse fee includes an hourly rate. Well, included, this is a long time ago when the market was still good. But we would always have a clause in there that basically said that, because we're going to tweak it, we're going to change, if anything changes, or if we have to modify the site, because, we had to get the site plan permitted as well. Doing stormwater management calcs, it all changes when you change the position on, even if they're all the same the same size lot. You change the position of it, it changes the stormwater calc. So, we would say, you're going to have to pay for that. So we did try to guard ourselves against all of that, because, no one ever understood that it wasn't just the same plan dropped on another site that has a completely different site criteria than, the one that it was originally designed for. There's going to be changes, and you're going to need to pay for them.
Yeah, we ran into this on another K-8 school where the district had a construction manager that they've used on all of their schools, and so they have a good working relationship. They need a school, they build them a school, and so they do have a level of trust. And it was like a Monday morning meeting, and the lead guy from the contracting company comes in because they're going to build the new school that we're going to design. He says, well, I, took it upon myself this weekend to spend some time and do a layout for you. And basically his whole argument was, we can use the same school that we just built. We just have to flip this and rotate this. And okay. And it's like, what do you think about this project is the same as the last project? That was an elementary school for 400 kids. This is a K-8 for 700 kids. This is on a flat site. This is on an old rock quarry that has 40 feet of fall. It's all of those things that you have to think about. And what he's trying to do is get on the good side of the guy who's in charge of district finance, right? Saying, we can redo this project for super cheap. And we basically don't even need these architects in here. And there's so many things that have to be figured out that they are not even thinking of, and it's crazy.
Misnomer of any, especially in the schools, but really in any project, is prototype. It's not a prototype. Yes, they may have very striking similarities to each other, but almost every condition is completely different, and it needs to be accounted for. And that's why you need us. Because, we had one of my old firms, we did prototype schools. We did a couple of prototype schools. And same thing, it's just like, well, because the site, is different here, it's a little bit more, you've got like a 40-foot elevation change across basically the distance of the, footprint of the school. Versus the other one which was just flat. oh, we can just flip this and stretch it and maybe shift your first floor will now be your ground level, your basement level. And, your second floor will now be your first floor. And, it's going to be 2 different levels and all that other stuff. But that really can't be that hard, right?
It's on the computer. You just push a couple of buttons.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean, Revit has an easy button, right? AutoCAD has an easy button, right? You just flip it, stretch it, Exactly.
That's Staples.
Actually, we have this one guy in the office who went out and bought one of the Staples easy buttons. They kind of sold them, and he glued it to his computer or has it by his computer. And, he's just, let me just hit my easy button. We'll be done in a minute.
Nice.
Yeah. That's another topic for another day, but man, people who wonder why everything takes so long. Or they just think,
but you're just
can you do this really fast?
How hard is that? How long can that take? Oh, exactly.
It's not real.
What did Jody just? Jody Brown just posted something on Twitter the other day. It said, "I just designed this edition in 8 hours. It took me 25 years to figure out how to do that, though."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's not an assembly
Although,
line.
most people, that's what they think is, just like, it's got doors, it's got windows. How hard is it? You've got the kit of parts. How hard is it to just grab all those kit of parts and just throw them together? And you're just like, it really does kind of actually take, there are things that we need to take into account for your safety.
You do have to worry about all those codes and stuff, right?
Codes? What are codes?
That's our responsibility.
Well, that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about, the do-it-yourself Home Depot mentality of, people basically going in, you're right, Neil, it's 9-10. Well, we see it in, a lot of commercial projects too, but, 9 times out of 10, you see it in residential, and you walk into a house and like, we're thinking about doing this addition here, and we want to just kind of throw it together. But we had this, and we did this, and the previous owner did that, and I'm not sure if there was a permit pulled on them or not, but I think those should be fine. So we just want to put it in the middle. And then you go and you do your design, and it's just find out nobody did a permit, so you got to pull those in, blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Yep. That happened. Just recently I received a call, and a gentleman wanted to know, well, what do you charge for 100 square foot addition? I'm like, addition of what? Are we talking, where is it? What is it? You don't have to worry about that. Just what does it cost to do a 100 square foot addition? I'm like, really? I have no idea what we're even talking about. So, I could have given him some square footage numbers, but that's his maybe building cost.
Yeah, but is it a bathroom or is it a garage, right?
And what are the finishes? Is it an addition to a second-story bedroom that you might want to actually have it continue to stand?
Yeah, it was the most interesting thing. I finally, through some conversation, convinced him that we should meet on site and at least discuss what he needed. Maybe it wasn't just 100 square feet. I was trying to steer him back to what is the problem and what do we need to do to maybe solve that problem. It may not have been just 100 square foot addition. And he said, oh yeah, well, okay, I'll call you back and confirm this time. I never heard from him again. I was kind of glad he actually didn't call me back. So
yeah. I'm sure we've all heard those, had those guys calling up. It's just like, it'll be really easy. You don't really have to put much time into it, but, the permitting officials are saying that I need an architect to sign and stamp this. So it's not really going to be much trouble for you.
Right. Exactly.
I was like, I appreciate that you're going to absolve me of any liability, but unfortunately that all of the jurisdictions won't when it falls down.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So time to wrap it up here.
All right.
If you have any questions or comments, please visit our website at archispeakpodcast.com or on our individual Twitter accounts, which are listed on the website. You can also follow Archispeak on Twitter and visit our Facebook page. And if you like the show, please leave us a review on iTunes. Till next time, thanks for listening.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.